What is going on, everybody? James Hancock here. I'm back for a spoiler-free review for Warfare, which opens this weekend, although at the very end of my video, I might have one or two spoilers, but I'll give you a warning and a time code and all that stuff, but holy shit. The next time anybody hears me on this channel complaining about how movies are no longer intense or that they've all been defanged or declawed and that they all come across like, chewing on cardboard, just politely tell me to shut the fuck up because Warfare is visceral and intense and terrifying. I'm not going to say that it's thrilling or exciting or entertaining because it's not going for that at all. But it's 95 minutes long. Like the first 20 or 30 minutes, it's just an exercise in sustained tension, and you're just going to kind of chew your nails, waiting for the inevitable to occur. And then once the battle begins, I guess I should say what the battle is initially before I go into any further discussion, but here's the official description from Wikipedia. Warfare is a 2025 war action film written and directed by Mendoza and Alex Garland. Based on Mendoza's experiences during the Iraq War as a former U.S. Navy SEAL, the film follows in real time a platoon of Navy SEALs on a mission through insurgent territory in November of 2006 during the final stages of the Battle of Ramadi. And what's incredible about this movie is that it's not trying to give you a complete and total overview of the entire conflict. It's not trying to give you even a complete and total overview of the battle at hand. All you see and all you experience is from the point of view of the characters involved in this particular conflict. So you know what they know, you hear what they hear, and it's incredibly immersive. That's probably the best word to describe this movie. It's not like a POV situation where it's trying to kind of put you in the driver's seat, almost like a first-person shooter. It's still, got like a little third-person objectivity, but you're in the room with these guys having these experiences. And what it reminded me of, for anybody who saw Black Hawk Down, which I guess came out like maybe close to 25 years ago, there's a scene in that movie that lasts only a couple seconds where somebody's bleeding through their femoral artery, and somebody's reaching up into his leg trying to squeeze off that femoral artery so that he won't bleed out. And the guy's thrashing and he's screaming, but it lasts a couple seconds. This movie, like the latter hour of it, is like that entire artery sequence from Black Hawk Down, but sustained for an hour. And I was in the front row in an IMAX theater, and it was overwhelming at times because the noise is cacophonous. It's thunderous. I mean, periodically there are jets flying right down the streets of this town, and you're like, whoa! I mean, it's like it'll make your eardrums burst and your skull rattle, and that's the whole point. But it's just the constant screams of agony. It's the constant chaos and confusion over the radio, mixed signals, mixed information, so many different people barking and screaming orders. It is hardcore. So much so that it's an easy frontrunner for my favorite movie that I've seen so far in calendar year 2025. And admittedly, it's been kind of a thin year, but there are a few movies here and there that I have enjoyed. But Warfare, holy crap. It's one of those movies that people are going to have to like go for a walk and decompress after watching it. The theater was in a state of stunned silence. And it's unusual for New York because New Yorkers are loud, but I went to this theater called Kips Bay, and I was a little dismayed to see how thin the audience was. But I would say it's about maybe like a third to a halfway full. But everybody was just kind of numb and mute during the whole experience, which is unheard of in New York. And as we were walking out, I heard a few people kind of nervously talking. But as I got onto the street, a guy whipped out his phone and it typical New York accent was like, oh my fucking God, the movie is so fucking, I mean, yeah, I can't really do a New York accent. I can do a Southern accent, but I can't do a New York accent, even though I've lived here for close to 17 years. But in his best kind of New Yorker tone of voice, he was just ranting and raving about how intense it was. And it was almost like he had taken his finger out of a dike and suddenly all the water came rushing out, where he finally was allowed to just let the emotions out, because there's nothing in this movie where you get to kind of, you never get to exhale. You're kind of just tense for the whole experience, like, oh fucking God, like how much more can my nerves take? And that's precisely what they're going for, because this is a story that was experienced firsthand by the co-writer and co-director. And as a lot of my subscribers know, I'm totally obsessed with film history, but one really interesting aspect of film history is seeing which filmmakers and actors who served in various armed conflicts, how do they use that to inform their overall style or approach to storytelling? I mean, one of the earliest examples would be William Wellman, who was a pilot in World War I, more than 100 years ago, and then he co-directed Wings in 1927. And there were a lot of actors and a lot of filmmakers who served in World War II, like Jimmy Stewart. I mean, he was a very decorated pilot. And John Huston was shooting, he wasn't a soldier, but he was over there shooting wartime documentaries and saw a lot of combat firsthand. Filmmaker Russ Meyer saw a lot of combat firsthand. John Ford was very involved. And there are a ton of actors like Lee Marvin, where their entire screen persona was informed by their wartime experiences, or Oliver Stone. I mean, when I was a kid, Platoon was one of the biggest movies out there, and I watched it over and over and over again. And Platoon is just Oliver Stone recreating all the experiences that he had in Vietnam. But what's different about Warfare is how it's basically just like half of a day, or it's an evening up through the following day. And there's very little narrative, there's very little story, and there's a little bit of character development in terms of how these experiences shape these individuals and how they respond. But it's just putting you right there in the room to experience the just the chaos of warfare, the fog of war firsthand. And I have a feeling it's going to end up being, for a lot of people, the most powerful movie of 2025. And what's interesting about Ray Mendoza, apart from the fact that this movie is based on his own experiences as a Navy SEAL, is how he started out in movies as a technical advisor for Alex Garland on his movie Civil War. I don't know if he started out there, but he was a military supervisor on that movie. And that authenticity is oftentimes lacking in a lot of movies where you're like, people always say, oh, Hollywood's going to kind of glam it up and it's going to make it totally feel like bullshit. Every single scrap of film in this movie, every little detail, you're like, woof, this is almost too authentic. Like, this is too much reality. And I know with the Iraq War, a lot of people they were happy just to tune it out for many years on end, or something else happening on the other side of the planet, and they just stopped paying attention. I worry that some of that impulse might still be remaining 20 years later, and that people might ignore this movie. I'm going to implore people to revisit the Iraq War just so you have some appreciation for what a lot of these soldiers experience, especially the character of Elliot Miller, a sniper who is injured over the course of the story. And he's featured prominently in the poster for the movie. You can tell that he goes through quite a lot, but he's played by Cosmo Jarvis, who a lot of people will recognize from the recent show Shogun, where he plays John Blackthorne. This is a very different kind of role, and everything he experiences, you're going to have to experience it right alongside him, and with every little grisly detail that you can possibly imagine. But I'd say the cast on the whole, they seem really invested and really dedicated. I mean, Will Poulter is particularly good in this, and Will Poulter, I mean, when you look at him, he almost looks like a G.I. Joe action figure. Like, oh my God, like he's going to be able to take on this entire town all by himself. This is a movie that is very grounded in gritty realism, and there's some bad motherfuckers in this movie, and you'll see some ass kickery of a sort, but once again, it's not designed to like get your adrenaline going, like, oh my God, like, all right, here they go, like it's time to whoop some ass. The whole time you're just going to be, your palms are going to be sweating as you dread, like, what is the next stray bullet that might catch one of these guys in the knee, in the foot, or whatever, as they're trying to just get out of the situation intact. We also have Michael Gandolfini in here. Michael Gandolfini, I feel like he's suddenly, he's everywhere. He's in Daredevil, he's here. He's obviously the son of the late, great James Gandolfini. I think it would be very premature to say that he's anywhere near on his father's level, but I at least admire the fact that he's hustling his ass off and getting tons of gigs. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if a lot of the actors in this movie who were previously unknown to us start getting cast in various shows and movies left and right. But let's talk a little bit about Alex Garland's involvement, because obviously Alex Garland's a filmmaker that we've all been following for a very long time, ever since he wrote the script to 28 Days Later. And obviously he handled the script writing duties for 28 Years Later, coming out later on. And in recent years, it seemed like he was going all in as a director, and movies like Ex Machina were pretty goddamn good. But recently, he's been talking about how he wants to kind of step back from directing. I have no idea why. Maybe the experience of making Civil War was really, really challenging. Who knows? Or maybe some of his other movies didn't perform as well as he would have liked. But on this movie, apparently, he's slowly but surely, here's my theory. According to what I'm reading here on Wikipedia, it says that during the filming, Garland announced his intentions to step back from directing films and focus on writing, while announcing that his directorial role in Warfare would be more of a supporting role to Mendoza's. Maybe he just felt like this guy's telling his own story about his own experiences. He should be front and center as the storyteller or the main director, and then Alex Garland can help him with the technical side. But if so, that's one of the most generous things you could possibly imagine, where a much more experienced filmmaker and writer is helping his military supervisor from a previous movie start his career. And don't be surprised if Ray Mendoza starts getting hired left and right based on his work here, because the action while it's more traumatizing than entertaining, it's incredibly intense, incredibly impactful. And I feel like if you need somebody, even if you just hired him as a first unit director to lend a certain amount of authenticity to a battle, he's your guy. And all the main characters in this movie, they're covered in so much gear and so much equipment and so many different little items. I wish they had just one scene for the dumbasses like myself where my knowledge of the military and terminology is non-existent. I get very self-conscious about it because my grandfather, who served in World War II, he would probably be humiliated hearing me even discuss any sort of military conflict of any kind, but he also was famously very tight-lipped. He wouldn't discuss his experiences apart from like silly things that like playing cards with his friends and getting in fights and the kind of like the more harmless details. But if he was going to talk about his experiences, he would only do so with his fellow veterans. But I wish there had been a scene for dumbasses like myself where perhaps there might be like a new guy to their unit who just needs to be explained or taught what all the various items are that they're packing, because they're just covered in so many different like forms of ammunition and so many different tools and so many different items that they use strategically over the course of the movie, and you're just expected to keep up. And I was like, oh my, like, what's that? I was very curious about all the little details. This movie does no hand-holding of any kind. There's very little exposition, and if you're confused and terrified and bewildered and kind of disoriented, I think that's very much on purpose, because once things really start happening, and as they start getting injured and they can't hear, and so there's scenes where everything's kind of muted and muffled, or if they have like a bad head injury or kind of get their bell rung, as they say, being too close to an explosion, they get really disoriented. They probably have some sort of brain trauma, and so everything is designed to make you experience that vertigo and everything they're experiencing. People are going to freak the fuck out after they watch this. I just hope that the trailer doesn't is not off-putting to people, because there's no getting around the fact that this was not a fun movie to watch. I think it's going to be for people who crave intensity. They're going to be like, fuck yeah, warfare rules. But it's going to be hard to market it and lure people into paying, $25 to see it in IMAX. But I strongly implore people to see it in IMAX. It'll blow your goddamn mind. But you know what? Now that I think about it, there actually is one scene that actually allows you to enjoy the movie. So let me go into my spoiler section now. 3, 2, 1, last warning. There's one or two little details that I want to discuss, but I can't do so without divulging some details. And the movie's opening this week, so some people are going to start seeing it, but the very first scene of the movie is all these guys just sitting around a laptop watching this music video, and they're all just kind of dancing and laughing and just having a good time. And it's so charming. You're immediately invested in all those actors. Like, oh my God, I hope they all make it. I hope they all make it to the end of the movie. And they're smiling and high-fiving. And even as they're going out into the evening for their first mission, they're still doing some of the dance moves and goofing around. It just makes you immediately become a fan of these characters and just hoping that they're all going to be all right when it draws to a close. But obviously things are not all right. And initially as the battle unfolds, I was like, all right, well, these guys are bad motherfuckers. They can handle anything that this movie throws at them. I'm confident they're going to be fine. And as they're trying to get out of this building, they have this giant, I don't know if it's called a tank or whatever it's called, a big armored vehicle comes to pick them up. And as they're getting in, the vehicle goes over an IED. And the IED, once that explodes, the movie becomes far more horrifying than most horror movies. Once again, this is serious spoiler territory, but there's one detail where I was just recoiling into my seat and kind of writhing and tying myself up in knots, because one guy's legs get so utterly decimated and they're so just completely, utterly destroyed. It's the character played by, the character played by Cosmo Jarvis, Elliot Miller. One person, one arm, he grabs him and he's trying to drag him back into the building. And as he's dragging him around a corner, his legs, which are just totally shattered, one of them gets caught on the corner. And I was like, I'm going to fucking pass out watching this movie. I cannot handle this shit. And because so many of these soldiers have had their brains basically turned into oatmeal from this IED that went off right next to them, they start making a lot of stupid decisions, or they just get confused. Like Will Poulter's like, I'm fucked up. Like he can't make clear decisions. Like when the Gandolfini character is trying to inject morphine into somebody who's critically injured, he's so befuddled, he does the morphine backwards and ends up injecting his own hand and making it go numb. And so it's just these mistakes just kind of keep getting compounded. Or even when a fresh batch of guys finally arrives to quote unquote save the day. I mean, it's a ton of reinforcements arrive, but it's like they're being fired upon from every angle imaginable. It's not like they come swooping in to save the day and kick everybody's ass. They're immediately stuck in the same trap as the rest of them. But as they're maneuvering and trying to secure the building, it's filled with so much blood and smoke and dirt and grime and dust. They keep stepping on and kicking injured soldiers on the ground. And there are 2 soldiers on the ground where their legs are just utterly decimated. And every time they even tap them with their foot, even though they don't intend to, I was just wincing and like recoiling in my seat. It's really traumatizing stuff to watch. And as long as I'm in the spoiler section, I should add that you should stick around to the very end of the movie where they show you the pictures of all the soldiers who were involved in the conflict and the actors who were playing them. But for whatever reason, a lot of these soldiers decided not to go public with their identities. Obviously, the character that of Ray Mendoza, he's very very publicized. He's the director of the movie, the co-writer of the movie, and one of the main actors. The actor's name is Defaro Wunatai, if I'm saying that at all correctly. And then they show the real life Elliot Miller, who's still in a wheelchair and kind of a big burly guy, but he's there on the set, high-fiving and hugging and giving everybody his expertise. Most of the real life characters or individuals involved in this conflict, their faces are blurred out, and you just see the actor playing them. I guess they prefer their anonymity. I'm not quite sure what their reasons might have been as to why some would like to stay private and some would like to stay public, but I'm sure they all have their own individual reasons. But I should say this is an A24 movie, and I feel like this is precisely the kind of movie that A24 should be making. This is not the kind of movie Warner Brothers is going to make, or Disney, or Paramount, or Universal, or any of the big traditional studios. It's way too gritty and intense and hardcore. It's not, a 4-quadrant movie, as people like to say. And as A24 enters into this next stage in their development where their budgets are getting bigger and they're trying to get more commercial while at the same time hanging on to the, idiosyncratic or just like the auteur-driven storytelling that's defined their company. I think the first A24 movie was in 2013, but they've built up a reputation for being very filmmaker-friendly, but it's hard to remain filmmaker-friendly as your budgets go up. Like, everybody thinks, oh, just let the filmmakers do what they want. Like, everything will work out. Like, if it were that easy, everybody would do it, because everybody, if you love movies, of course you want to make movies, but making movies at a much bigger budget, it's incredibly challenging, it's incredibly risky, and I keep saying it on this channel, A24 is entering the most risky part of their development because they're in that no man's land. They're not making like $150 million movies like Minecraft, but they're no longer making the little experimental $3 or $4 million movies. They're in that dead zone between like 30, 40, 50, 60 million. Let me see if I can find out if they even have published Warfare budget 2025. So take this with a giant grain of salt. Who knows if this is at all accurate, but I did a quick Google search, and under the AI overview it says, while the exact budget for A24's Warfare has not been publicly released, based on the studio's past films and industry knowledge, it's likely to be in the range of 50 to 70 million. Who the hell knows if it's way below that, way above that? Sometimes I've asked some AI overview questions before. Like, I remember asking one time, how many movies did Denzel Washington and Tony Scott make together? And they started listing all these movies, and some of them were movies directed by Ridley Scott. I was like, this AI is not as intelligent as the name would suggest. And obviously, it's when it comes to research, it's getting better all the time. But I've just seen it make too many goddamn mistakes on Google to trust it. So let's just say I have no idea what the budget is, but these kinds of movies are a challenge because they are not movies you can take the entire family to. You can't take like your grandparents and the kids and all their friends and that sort of thing. This is a movie for people who like movies that really kind of, how can I say this? They like strong medicine. They like the form of potent storytelling that oftentimes makes too many people uncomfortable, and they're not willing to go there. They want to have a nice time at the movies, and Warfare is not a nice time at the movies. But I think if at any point in your life you've ever craved that kind of intoxicating form of storytelling that is in such short supply these days, as so many movies just seem risk averse and cautious and bland and boring and based on IP that's been around for 50, 60 years, where it's like, why are you making yet another remake or yet another sequel? Why are you making the 37th Marvel movie? Like, can't we have some new shit? Warfare is some new shit, and I hope that A24 will line up a bunch of gigs for Ray Mendoza. Like, all right, you've told your story. Now, like, look at Oliver Stone's career. After he did Platoon, he made movies like JFK and Born on the 4th of July and a whole host of different kinds of movies. I hope this will unlock Ray Mendoza's career where he can move beyond being a military supervisor and just start telling some kick-ass stories in his own way. And as far as Alex Garland goes, I hope this won't be the end of his directorial career, because I feel like he was just getting warmed up. And I've said this a million times before on the channel, but I owe him a huge debt of gratitude. When he was talking about his love and affection for Dark Souls and all the endless customization, I got so intrigued that I got completely obsessed myself with Dark Souls 1, 2, 3, etc. And I've basically been playing those games, From Software games, for like the last 10 years. So I owe it all to Alex Garland for wasting who knows how many hours of my life playing those games. But he persuaded me. But if you look at the films he directed, it's Ex Machina, Annihilation, Men, Civil War, and co-directing on Warfare. Not a bad collection of movies going back to 2014. And some say he directed Dredd. It's uncredited, but he wrote the screenplay. Dredd kicks ass, but I don't know if it was a situation where somebody else was directing, but Alex Garland had to kind of take over. But he also has screenwriting credits on Sunshine and 28 Days Later, Never Let Me Go, and obviously the upcoming 28 Years Later. Alex Garland, he's a damn good storyteller. Maybe he's just a little bit burnt out. I haven't heard him speak about his decision to step back from directing, but maybe if he just goes off and writes a few movies or maybe writes a few books, then he'll get his excitement back. And who knows? Maybe Mendoza might be like, I've got this idea for like a science fiction war movie, but I'm going to need you to help me once again as my co-director. If they want to keep co-directing movies together, sign me up. I'll watch those movies all goddamn day. In any case, I think that's all I've got to say about Warfare for now. Very excited to see how people respond to it, what kind of business it can generate, what kind of reactions people might have. But like I said, like for the time being, it's my #1 movie of 2025 so far, but I still have very high hopes for a variety of movies coming out this year. I mean, Sinners coming out next week. Sinners, who knows how that might upset the order of things. I don't think I'll see a movie that's more intense than Warfare for the rest of the year. I don't even know if I want to see a movie that's more intense than Warfare for the rest of the year. Sometimes I need to be, remain in the world of escapist fantasy as opposed to so much gritty reality. But don't be surprised if a lot of people are talking about Warfare in glowing terms for the next 8 months for the rest of the year. It's one of the best movies of the year by far. So congrats to A24, congrats to Ray Mendoza and Alex Garland, congrats to the cast, congrats to everybody involved, and congrats, I shouldn't say congrats, I guess I should salute or tip my hat to all the Navy SEALs who were involved in the original conflict in the Battle of Ramadi, because you'll never think of the Iraq War in the same terms ever again after seeing this movie. And on that note, I'm going to wrap this sucker up. Remember to subscribe, hit the notification bell, like, all that stuff. Give me a comment down in the comments below. Looking forward to hearing people's thoughts, but more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.